Hi, and welcome to ThreatTraq Essentials, where we take a look at some everyday cybersecurity lessons that we can learn from this week's ThreatTraq stories. I'm here with Manny Ortiz, who was on the show this week. Thanks for being here, Manny.
Absolutely, pleasure.
Let's talk about some of the stories we covered this week. There's a little common thread of age running through them about older devices, older code. The first one John Hogaboom brought to us was a story about D-Link routers and a vulnerability there. Tell me, what was this vulnerability? What does it allow people to do?
So the vulnerability, unfortunately, allows you to get access to the device itself, which we definitely do not want that to happen with devices like a D-Link router, which is in essence the gateway into our home networks, our businesses, and so this vulnerability unfortunately exists in this D-Link router that has gone end of life, and that's what's allowing us to get in.
So that's important because time and time again we say on this show, patch your software, patch your devices, but in this case we can't. Tell me about that.
Exactly, so that's a problem, right? So you have a device now that the company has basically said, hey look, this device is 5 or 6 years old, and in today's world 5 or 6 years is an eternity for technology. It's gone end of life, and we're saying we're not going to support the product anymore, which means doesn't matter if it breaks, if it has a vulnerability in this case, we're not going to patch it.
You're just out of luck.
You're just out of luck at this point.
So we always say patch, you can't do that in this case. What advice do we give people now?
Unfortunately, at this point, the advice has to be turn that device into a doorstop. So go get yourself another device. Go buy yourself another device, because that company is basically telling you that we're not protecting you anymore. That device, if you keep it on your network, it's on you what happens. And we're seeing more and more that these devices end up staying where they are, and the hackers or bad actors out there love to attack those because they know the company has deemed it end of life.
They know it's vulnerable, right?
And they know it's vulnerable, and it's very easy to find these devices out there.
So if you have this device, you want to get rid of it, get something new. Let's talk about the next story John Markley brought to us about zombie code, appropriate for Halloween coming up.
Exactly.
What is considered zombie code in this case?
So in this case, it's sort of the patchwork of putting code together. So and this happens today. So this is not just something that's happened a long time ago. Today, code is many lines. It puts together something that works a piece of equipment, takes hundreds, sometimes thousands and hundreds of thousands of lines of code, sometimes millions of lines of code.
And
right?
It doesn't all come from the same place, and everyone's not writing it from scratch, right? They get these from libraries, and in this case, it was more with particularly medical devices, where a company came in and did some custom code for something, right?
Correct, right. So in this case, we have an infusion pump, right? This company says, hey, look, we're moving into the new technology. We want this device to be connected, right? And in order to be connected, we have to install some additional code on here so that, that we can connect to this device, we can tell its status and all that kind of stuff that we like to see in our devices. So unfortunately, that means adding additional code. So when you have one of these devices, you're starting to add in additional code that is starting to run some of these other features.
And the problem is the company that added this code is no longer with us.
Exactly. So they write this code, and the code is readily available. It's open source code. Anybody can really use it. And so a lot of these companies go in there, they go into these code repositories. They see a piece of code that works for their purpose. I'm going to take it. I'll take that piece of code and I'll use it, because why should I have to rewrite 5,000 or 10,000 lines of code if the code's already here for me?
So a lot of people out there, may not be writing code for medical devices, they may not even be writing code, but there is a lesson here for them, isn't there, about knowing if your devices and software are up to date or are end of life?
Correct. Yeah. The lesson here is that obviously if you're the one who's responsible for building and maintaining the code on a particular device, you really have to understand where it's all come from, and there has to be sort of a table of contents of what's included in my code, what libraries were used in order to create this final piece of code. I have to know what's inside of those so that I can always be paying attention to, is there a patch did one piece of my code have some vulnerability that was just announced, and I don't even know that it's inside my device and my code.
It's like getting your DNA of your ancestry done. You should know that for your code as well, where it came from and where the vulnerabilities are.
Exactly.
Let's talk about the story that you brought to us, which was about a vulnerability in VPNs. Now, a lot of people out there may be using VPNs for their work, even if they have a small company that allow a secure way for people offsite or employees to log into the network. But there's a problem there. What is it?
Yeah, so the problem again, sort of what the theme seems to be is it's older. It's an older device, perhaps unsupported device from these manufacturers. They sit around, and there's vulnerabilities that get announced for them, and these vulnerabilities sit open because these devices, when you plug them in, you set them up the first time, and you forget them because they're working. They're doing what they're supposed to do, which is giving you.
Don't fix it.
Right, exactly.
Right? Yeah.
They're doing what they're supposed to be doing. They've given you access to your network from the outside, which is what you wanted. The problem is that when one of these vulnerabilities gets announced, it's a gateway through your front door. It allows a bad actor to basically use one of these vulnerabilities, which is easy to exploit for the most part. A lot of these, especially the ones from that we read about from these CVEs, they're easy to exploit, and in essence gives them the keys right through your front door.
So there are patches available in these cases, but there's an extra step really you should take. We always say patch, but there's another component too that you should check, right?
Correct. So in these cases, a lot of times we're always hammering with everybody, go patch your devices, understand what you're running. If there's a patch available, make sure you patch it as soon as possible. What people don't realize is that unfortunately this device, depending on how long it's been sitting out there without the patch on it, you sometimes don't know whether or not somebody's gotten onto that device. If somebody got onto that device before you ran your patch, they may have pulled the credentials you're using, so your admin or your root credentials onto that device. If they've pulled those off.
That's like your username and password,
exactly,
they would have that, right?
Exactly. Now you run your patch on that device, so you patch it up and you think, hey, great, I'm patched, I can go off and do what I need to do. But unfortunately, the bad actor has already gotten the root password. If you don't change that root password, it doesn't matter that you've patched it. They still have the keys to your front door. So make sure you change those passwords.
So not only patch, also change your passwords after you patch, just to be extra careful.
Correct, absolutely.
Well, that's great advice, Manny. Thanks for being here.
Yep.
Thank you for watching. As always, you can click on the link below to see a playlist and take a deeper dive into any of these stories. And we'll see you next time.